After listening to the reports here, I wish I had a time machine and I could just transport every last one of you, especially you, okay, back to 1996. I'm the president of the union that represents all of the public corrections officers, support staff, maintenance workers, record office in the DC Department of Corrections. That's the public officers. Ironically, I was the vice president of the union when we had 4,000 members in 1996, when the union by itself, without any of you lovely people, were fighting that billion-dollar Goliath as they came in here to Washington, D.C. to take over that prison system. They did everything, and I know I'm off subject, but I was enthralled by that. They did everything that he said in gaining the right influence and gaining the right people to come into Washington, D.C. and actually take the CCA, run it at a loss because they were 10 blocks down the street from the future governors of these states where these policies are going to be made. Although it was in its infancy back in the mid-90s, the American Legislative Exchange Council, your turn to shake your head, yes, I was doing it while you were talking. The American Legislative Exchange Council grew up. They didn't make the mistakes they made when they did this contract. All right? The reducing population is losing of money here, so they put in those provisions that guaranteed that amount of money. When it came to who they would take, the contract here is one of the most subsidized CCA contracts in the country. Their per diem, their rate per day per incarcerated citizen is roughly about $70. Hours over at the jail is about 128 per day. It's kind of ironic when you can educate them for a lot less. But anyway, but what is that $70? That goes to the we can do it cheaper argument. But they don't have to wait to be billed for medical. We supply it. It's billed. It comes directly to us. Maintenance and the food, the biggest parts of any contract, are already covered in the public side in Washington, D.C. So anybody whispering around that we can do it cheaper, that's a lie. All right, we're subsidizing that, and I don't need to, this is the political side of me coming out. I didn't win the election as the union president for nothing. Now, let me get off my high horse and go back to the officers. Yes, we are trained comprehensively, and that amount of time, which over the past 4 years has expanded from 6 weeks to 8 weeks, and I understand it's going to go even further to ensure that the officers who are hired are capable of handling the programming and the specialization that's necessary in today's correctional system. But we need more tools to do it. And telling you from the inside looking out, here are the tools we need. Last Thursday, I testified before the Judiciary Committee of the City Council, and I called for my usual 5 things. I'm not going to get into the retirement. That's a thing with us. All right, we want to keep the people we train. We don't want them going to Prince George's County and Montgomery County. But the one thing we need more than anything else in this city is a publicly run new facility. What you're looking at 1900 D Street was built in 1976. Under the conditions that it was built, we had an entire state system behind it down at Lord. All the programming you could want, all the specialization, all the training, all the space, it was down at Lord. That's where I began my career, part of my 25 years. In fact, the majority still. It'll be a couple of more years before the seesaw goes this way. But that jail was not built to handle all those things because the agency in 1976 knew that that stuff existed down in the country. Now, this is critical, folks. This is very critical. Today, that's gone. It no longer exists. It's spread, well, it's not up there anymore, but it's spread across the country. All you have left is what's over there. But in the minds of everybody here, are the expectations with what corrections delivered in those days when we had both the state and the detention system here. And one of the things we're trying to do, striving to do on the inside, is meet those expectations. The programming, the medical. I like to talk about the things we're not budgeted for. Did you know? Did you know that the building at 1900 D Street, that building provides more adult education than any other building in Washington, D.C.? Adult education. It's a public school issue. Did you know that that building at 1900 D Street provides more mental health service beds than even St. Elizabeth's? We're not budgeted for that, but that's what we do. Did you know that between October and March, every year, we are the largest homeless shelter in Washington, D.C., and my office is 711 4th Street Northwest, around the corner. I see incarcerated citizens in and out going down to 300 Indiana Avenue. They walk right, and it's not hard to miss me when I'm out there in the community, because I'm always dressed like I am right now. And they tell me, hold my spot. It's getting cold, and I'm going to be right in there. And lo and behold, when I'm at work, they'll get my attention somehow, and they'll say, I'm back. Get me on the detail list so that I can go down and work in the kitchen or do the cleaning or environmental. And I mean, some of these guys I've grown up with. They'll tell you, if you go in the jail, they'll tell you they broke me in. Okay, they'll flip the switch. And guess what? They did, for real. We need your help in getting a new facility. Everything that you ask for, all the modern stuff that you need it done, and you need it done publicly. You don't need to make a deal with the private company to build the jail. You do not need to make any deals with them. And I believe they haven't made those billions of dollars just sitting on their hands, folks. They're out there all the time. And this prison right here, they can take a congressman, any congressman, walk him down there and do a tour, whisper in his ear, this is what we can do for you and save you money. And that congressman goes back and gets elected governor. We'll call him Spence in Indiana. We'll call him, let's see, I can name them all. Yeah, that nutball. I mean, that gentleman. They'll. I've got to be careful. They will take over, and they'll remember what they saw, and they've already been brainwashed about the savings, and that's what you're going to get. Now, I heard talk about the halfway houses, and let me say this from the inside out, and maybe my information is wrong. You can quote me on this. Hope Village has 300 beds, but the city of Washington, D.C., for the purposes of its detention and the sentencing of folks to halfway houses, only has control of 125 of them. You know how many people, do you know how a person feels when I'm walking down the tier and they say, I don't know why I'm in jail, the judge sentenced me to a halfway house, and I know as the union's president how many are out there, and I have to look that person in the eye and be that head he hits when his anger gets a little bit beyond what he can take, because what's happened to this individual is unjustified. We need more halfway houses. If the judges are going to sentence them there, and remember, no correctional officer ever arrested anybody, ever sentenced anybody. We want the things you want. It's a funny thing. How much time? 2 minutes? Funny thing. Back in 1996, they put out that they were trying to build a CCA prison in Southeast DC. Some of you will recall that, but it looks like most of you weren't even born then. But for you young folks, so they're going to ship the women out to put pressure on the general public to march and react. So Margaret Moore said, she passed these pink shirts around to the public, and she says, get out there and protest sending the women away. And they put this story in the Washington Post about a mother and her daughter. You all may remember this, okay? Well, I showed up along with the president of the union then. I was the vice president. And the people in the audience hooted at me, wow, what are you doing here? So I get up there and I say, well, let me talk for 60 seconds. If you don't like what I have to say, I'll leave. I was at the library at Martin Luther King Avenue, off of South Capitol Street, dressed like I am now. And this was 1996. That's life-threatening. Anyway, I got up and said, if she really didn't want them to go, which is what you're telling me, then all she has to do is not sign the order. That's all she has to do. You folks, I said to the audience then, are being manipulated to put pressure on the elected officials to help this private company come in here in Southeast DC and build this prison. It was stopped, bless you. It was stopped, thank heavens. But it wasn't stopped at CTF because it was just the union versus that Goliath that he accurately described. But today, praise the Lord, thank heavens, I have all of you and the experts on our side this time to have a very good discussion about private prisons and the corrosive effect they have. An empty private prison makes no money. So when we talk about issues like recidivism and empty beds, how does that match, folks? It's an oxymoron, okay? Doesn't work. I'm sorry I didn't describe it.